we on air now?
Let's do it,
Yes,
Kenneth.
we're
Yeah,
all
let's
good
do
now.
it.
So
Okay.
sorry.
Thank you everyone for your patience.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being patient. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'll start from the beginning. Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. I especially invited Kenneth from Monsoon Tea, Elyse from Tillet, and Ray from Grass People Tree because I wanted to learn more about tea and sustainability. It's very serious and important matter, but it can be complicated and feeling stuck if we try to learn ourselves. So I wanted to invite them because they have been walking this path in the previous years, especially with sustainability, and wanted to learn more about what sustainability was about, how I could become a better tea drinker. So in this panel, we are gonna talk about the topic, and feel free to leave questions because this is about tea and how to form tea society better. So I would like to make this as the inclusive discussion. And kindly ask each panel to briefly introduce yourself, and we'll go from Kenneth, Elyse, and Ray.
Okay, hi, I'm Kenneth Rimdahl, and I'm from Sweden, Stockholm, Sweden. I've been working with tea since '94, but the last 6 years I've been working with tea that grows in harmony with the forest, but not grows in normal tea plantation. It grows in the forest together with other trees and with the biodiversity. Yeah, that's more or less what I'm doing. I work only here in northern Thailand. Thank you. Next one.
Is it Elyse?
Or do you want to?
Hi, everybody.
long?
I'm
Yeah,
Elyse. I'm based in Las Vegas, Nevada, in the United States. So very honored to be representing North America in this conversation. I started a company called Tealets. It is a online farmers market for independent tea growers around the world. I started my journey in tea not as a connoisseur, although I have become one and understand the nuances of high quality tea and believe in high quality tea for the future of sustainability. I mean, that's it. Just drink good tea. That's it. Like, if there's one lesson to take today, that's it. But I actually started from environmental development, international development as a Peace Corps volunteer, working with rural farmers in Africa, the Caribbean, and now I work with farmers all over the world, mostly in more of the colonized tea growing regions, trying to help the local people that have been left with the abandoned tea gardens to maintain their gardens in a very natural way to restore their water, restore their soil fertility, but then also to create high quality tea and give us tea lovers more great tea to drink.
Hey everyone, my name is Ray, representing Grass People Tree. I grew up in southwest of China, a province called Guizhou, where tea has been made, foraged, made, enjoyed, in tune with nature for more than 2,000 years. And Grass People Tree is based in London, and because I've been living in London since 2008, and I realized in myself living here, there's a gap from how I know tea is to how people see tea here. So Grass People Tree is founded upon the basis of closing the gap in terms of seeing differences on tea, and also I guess sharing the narratives of tea that I grew up with. So yeah, very happy to be on board, and thank you all for joining in.
Can't hear you.
Sue, can't hear you. You muted.
Sorry. Yes,
Good.
now you should be able to hear. Okay. So I would like to start from, so in this panel, I'll be mostly questioning, and Kenneth, Elyse, and Ray will continue the conversation. So how do you define sustainability? Like, what is sustainability exactly?
For me, sustainability is something that can work without harming the nature and people and so on. Something that can continue working without destroying our planet or our people or our life, like insects and animals and so on. For me, that's the sustainability.
What about Elyse or Ray?
Yeah, I mean, the dictionary definition is just, systems that are able to, restore themselves and continue on. And so, I think the environment is a big piece of it, but there's other types of sustainability, especially in tea. There's economic sustainability, social sustainability. So that brings in the conversation about cultural preservation and the importance of if you talk to like a permaculturalist, so permaculture is one of the movements in the world that embraces sustainability and holds on to those principles. If you were to go to a permaculture school, they're not just going to teach you about how to plant and how to treat the soil and how to encourage more indigenous tree planting. But they're also going to talk about how do you maintain the cultures of the people living there and keep them authentic. Because if you try to inject a fake culture there, like we do see in some of the tea growing regions, like maybe like Lao Barjan could be a really famous, example of that, of kind of this artificial culture that's been kind of pushed in there, and it creates instabilities, it creates problems, so sustainability is just trying to be mindful of our past, our present, and our future being a continuous interconnected system that involves our environment and involves our communities and even like our processes such as currency and the economy.
Thank you.
To me, I didn't know sustainability is a thing until I moved here. It's such a thing because where I grew up, everything was, you eat cherries in April, and then after April is gone, and in autumn you have osmanthus, so you infuse osmanthus with flour, with tea, all the things that are, I guess, very seasonal. So since sustainability has become such a practice and also concept for the capitalist world we all live in, I guess what sustainability to me is to strip apart, first of all, the concept itself, and then goes back to look at how we all lived before all of this, the certified little triangle that we check on the label. Okay, this is sustainable product, so we all buy it. To go back from strip apart all of this, but it's about our own understanding of what nature is, and that I guess ties into what Kenneth said about biodiversity, of how things are growing, and also what Elyse just said about the cultural and the social and economic sustainability on things. So I guess it's all of that. And because I'm so lack of knowledge on sustainability in terms of the consumerism, today I went on the Cambridge Dictionary to check what is the definition of sustainability. So I'm going to read it out and share it with everyone. It says, sustainable meaning causing little or no damage to the environment and therefore able to continue for a long time. I think this is a bit too late now. causing little or no damage to the environment. That's a bit too late. So, I'm agreeing with Elyse in terms of saying that I think in order to be sustainable in the whole chain of a production of a product, we need to be aware of the social and cultural sustainability in order for it to go on to last. Because when they die, everything dies. When the culture dies, everything dies.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing the definition of sustainability from the dictionary too. So obviously Ray grew up from the tea, where tea grows up, and I'm just curious how you became interested in tea and sustainability. Like how, I think everyone has the beginning that became like interested in this topic. Like what was your start journey from?
I guess for me it's less of the concept of starting a sustainable business. It wasn't sort of under my moral compass, as you'd say, but it's really about sharing a way of life that I know, which is, again, I guess now the West will see it as being sustainable, and to share the sort of the wisdom and the culture that are more in tune with nature than the world that we live in nowadays. And that includes, not just the West, but also the rest of China and a lot of parts of Asia and everywhere else in the world. So I guess how I became interested, it was just about sharing a different point of view that I think could benefit for consumers, for people who make or pick or share tea, and for myself as a practice.
Thank you. How about Elyse or Kenneth?
Who will start? Do you want to start, Elyse?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I became interested in this because I was working with the tea company in Spain and coming to Thailand. I was around the world looking at tea and so on, but I came to Thailand to look for teapots. And then I didn't know that Thailand had tea. So my friend told me, yes, we have tea. So he showed me in the market here in Chiang Mai, tea, but it didn't look like tea. It was tea that was fermented for eating. So in the beginning, I didn't really believe it was tea. So my friend took me up in the mountains, and then I found the tea growing in the forest, and also find more information about that the tea actually, that it was growing wild and growing in the forest, because people have before the tea was drinking, people have planted tea as well in the forest for making the tea for eating, not for drinking. So this has been going on, this is the beginning of tea. You can read in this, The Tale of Tea, the historical book, that the beginning is actually the niang, that people were eating the tea in the beginning. And in Thailand, they continue eating the tea. They didn't really start drinking. So this made me very interested. It was very fascinating to see the tea growing in the forest together with all the biodiversity, with all the insects, together with all the other trees and so on. And that made me, and I found that about 20 years ago, but about 6 years ago, I decided I want to do a business, because I thought it was fascinating and it was like so. And when you travel around in the mountains and see the deforestation everywhere, I realized this is a way to protect the forest and the insects and the biodiversity. That by making a business that the farmers earn money by not cutting down the forest. So what we are doing is we try to sell as much tea we can, but only if the farmers, only tea that grows together with the forest that we call forest friendly. So then we buy from farmers, and the farmers we only buy if they don't cut down the forest or if they reforest damaged areas. So in this way, the farmers can earn money by keeping the forest. So the forest actually becomes a way of creating value to a product, which in this case is tea. So before I was a tea person, now I'm using the tea as a way of protecting forest in northern Thailand. So that's how I came into, and then later I realized this is called sustainability. But it was never like an idea of, oh, I'm going to start a sustainable business. It was just things that happened, and here I am.
So yeah, my story of interest in sustainability started far beyond my first cup of tea I ever drank, or I should say my first bottle of tea. So my story is I'm a food scientist, and I studied food science and worked in the food industry because I love food. My greatest joy in life is cooking a meal for somebody and watching them enjoy it. So my advisors in college said, hey, well, be a food scientist and then you can make food for the masses. You can provide sustenance to the masses. And so I did that, and I excelled at that. I'm very good at math and science, very good critical thinker, and I enjoyed food. And I kept having to move jobs to new food companies, trying to get closer and closer to what I thought in my head was food. And actually, I worked at a sushi factory, I worked at a dairy, I worked at a dry mix factory, and every time trying to get to like more organic or more food, and realizing that my job ultimately was poisoning people. You know, I was the lab coat that was approving which chemicals or which preservatives got put in, and I just like didn't like that. And so that's what took me on the path of working with farmers and doing the Peace Corps. And so then I had a very strong standard of who I would work for when I returned to the States as a food scientist. And I ended up getting a job at Itoen, which is the largest tea manufacturer in the world. They had a factory, a canning factory in Hawaii where I was living, which was also another great source of my education and understanding of sustainability, of systems of aloha, systems of love and interconnection. So I was working at this tea company for a couple of years as their quality supervisor. An interesting story about that experience: the entire 2 years that I was their quality control supervisor, I never knew what Camellia sinensis was. It just really represents how disconnected the food industry is from food, right? Like I was like the top quality assurance person in the whole facility, and I didn't even know where the tea came from. And that was actually the source that took me, you know, on my journey now. Is we were receiving these 3-ton super sacks of powdered green tea that was used in the brewing for the unsweetened. Itoen makes the unsweetened bottled green tea. They're the the innovators of that. And we'd receive these huge super sacks, and for FDA compliance, we have to have traceability of all of our products. So like if a supplier calls and says, oh, this lot number is contaminated with salmonella, you need to trace it to the product. I had to write in our program that we would have to assume that 100% of our products were contaminated because we had no coding system from our raw materials coming in. And so when I told that to my boss and I said, hey, let me develop this coding system, let me go to Japan, let me figure this out for you guys. They said, no, this is management work, it's in Japanese language, you don't speak Japanese, you can't be a Japanese manager. So I went to go get a Japanese MBA because I thought that that was the solution. And in that process is where I started meeting tea farmers in Japan. I actually started quite a famous internship program in Kyoto on a tea farm there called Obubu, and was starting a nonprofit there with these networks of all these independent tea farmers, and realizing that the reason why I would not have been able to make that coding system was because the industry is so commodified, it's like impossible to code. You know, whatever goes into your tea bags, whatever goes into your bottle of RTD tea you're drinking, it is like impossible because it's coming from hundreds, if not thousands, of different sources, no traceability, and it's just a commodity. You know, it's just this like less than $5 a kilo traded thing that's not really bringing value back to the farmers. So it was like natural for me to like apply my experience through international development and working on food sovereignty in Hawaii to start TLET, to start this business that would be able to empower tea businesses or food businesses to source product ingredients directly from the farmer, or at least with a lineage of transparency from the farmer to their business. So yeah, my story of sustainability is a bit different. I came in wanting to apply sustainability to tea, and now I'm here.
In those company, does tea become like a commodity just simply to increase profit? Why is it becoming like commodity? Ew.
Thanks to the British.
Yeah, exactly. It's totally the same concepts of colonialism.
Kenneth, what did you say?
It started with the Dutch, and then the British took over and made it like big business, big international business.
But now it's far beyond the British.
Worldwide tea culture and that we are used to, especially in Europe. I think we are not so much in America, but in Europe we are used to such a low tea prices. If we go into a supermarket, it's like it's ridiculous. It can never be sustainable to have those prices, because there's no way that we can produce for those prices. And we are used to these low prices, and today the prices are going up in quality teas and so on. So, but the supermarkets and so on, they have to stay with the prices that people are used to, so they have to go down in quality quite often.
I just wanted to say something. To me, I think in order to continue the conversation, for me, I have to clarify for myself when I say tea, it doesn't apply to tea in the tea bag. That is not a tea for me or for a lot of Chinese people. So what are we actually talking about? I think needs further clarification. So suing in this...
But that is tea for the most of the world.
Yes, that is. But I'm just saying from my point of view of when I say tea here, I'm not talking about these things because if I say the tea that is in the tea bag, that is a tea as a commodity. But so then that needs it just definition. I think terminology for myself. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I think with that clarification, then our discussion it could go different ways. So if we're talking about why tea has become a commodity, is not because of the culture of tea itself. It's about economy. It's about capitalism. It's about making it so quantifiable and so industrialized, so every household can have it as the cheapest way possible. And then I guess Elyse, I'm throwing the ball at you now. That then leads to all the questions about traceability, transparency, and everything else. But then tea as like loose leaf tea that is single origin and all of that is a different story.
Yeah, but it's still tea, and there's many. Yeah, it's still tea. I only work, of course, with that as well. But we cannot. What would you call the rest? You cannot just say that the rest is not tea. It is tea.
I'm not saying that it's not tea. I'm saying it's mass-produced tea.
Yeah,
which has very different way of understanding tea as Camellia sinensis. It's a different approach, I guess. So when we're talking about this particular issue, I think for me it's helpful to have clarification.
No, you're right. Yeah, and there are some terms. So like the term commodity tea is known, and so then the counter to commodity tea is typically specialty tea. But even if you look at that definition, even by the Specialty Tea Institute or like, you know, other organizations that have tried to define that, even like market tracking, you know, efforts, they define specialty tea as pretty much anything that's not RTD, ready to drink, not in the grocery store, and not sold at food service. So that's everything else, right? And that includes things that could be in a tea bag or blended and added with flavors and everything else that we know. And so I think, yeah, you're right. We do have to define it even more acutely than that. You know, and so it's like, I still consider that commodity. I mean, maybe it's borderline commercial. So like maybe there's 3 categories. There's a commodity, commercial, and then what I just call good tea, you know? So like, let's just like try to define what is good tea then, right? Like, instead of trying to focus on that negative path that like we don't want to exist. I mean, maybe we could, if we think and try hard enough, we can manifest this commodity crap to not exist. But
why don't you want it? We have tea cultures like in Morocco that drinks tea with flavor, with mint and so on. In Europe, we drink about 80% of our tea is flavored. We do a lot of flavored tea. 80% of the Chinese, we have a lot of Chinese customers buy my flavored tea. We have also, of course, teas that are very without flavor, like white teas and tippy, golden tips or whatsoever. But why do you want to like take all the other cultures away? The tea is not only a Chinese drink; it's many cultures. We have a lot of cultures.
Yeah. It's not the
British
culture.
British culture is with milk and maybe tea bags or PG tips.
Yeah.
Why do you want to take that away from it, like a tea culture?
Because there's no dignity in the production of those products, and I don't support that. You know, and I don't have the patience anymore. I used to have the patience. Peers in the industry, like when I was first starting to expose like labor practices and environmental practices and the things that were happening on those large tea estates that are completely swept under the rug, I had peers in the industry say, hey, Elyse, no, you can't do that, because what if you create enough awareness that there's a boycott and then there's like so many jobs and people relying on those industries, and that's true. But now I've just gotten to a point, like, I guess it's the pandemic, it's my whole values have kind of changed over the past few months now, where I don't think that, like, we should be patient and wait for that stuff to work itself out, because it won't work itself out. The environment's going to continue to get more raped, the trees are going to continue to get more cut down, and the people are going to continue to be more oppressed. And more oppressed, the more and more we avoid it. You know what I mean? So it's not the cultures that I want to eliminate. Those cultures are beautiful.
What do you mean avoiding it? We, for example, I'm working with small farmers, and we are also reforest areas where they cut down the trees and so on. But I still do flavored tea. I still do tea that I will call like kind of Thai breakfast, so people can drink with milk and sugar. Why do you want to take it away from? There are tea cultures in many different ways. It's not like a one tea culture. The whole world is drinking tea in different ways. And we have to, for all these people, try to make the production more sustainable. Not only for some small group of people who drink tea, very specialized teas and so on. Because then the market is too small. It doesn't. We need to make the big market sustainable.
Yeah. No, you're correct. So we have to find that middle point, like how to bring those things together. But like, yeah, we can make flavored tea from good tea. We can try to cater to that, but it is an uphill battle. Like, I work with several clients, right? I work with a wide range of clients. Like, my business only does wholesale. So we work with tea shops and brands. And, most of all my best clients are ones that like are just doing it slowly and catering to that small little market you talked about. But I have a small handful of clients that are trying to take, direct trade, transparently sourced, ethical tea and put it into Walmart. They're trying, and they're failing miserably because they cannot compete on price. It's just impossible. I'd assume that in those products that you're making, Kenneth, you're paying more than $2 a kilo for the tea that you're working with.
Absolutely, much more.
But the rest of the industry is paying less than $2 a kilo.
Yeah, but I mean, and our customers needs to pay more as well than these people. They have to pay because our farmers are getting paid and they work in the forest and not in in plantation where you can cut with machines, and they don't live under slavery or like in very bad ways. And they work normally. They live in their own village and they pick around their village. So okay, yes, absolutely, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to produce tea that people like.
Yeah.
People like tea, and most people like, for example, flavored tea. So I mean, because for me, the more tea I sell, the more forest I can save. The more tea I sell, the more I buy from farmers, the more money they make by keeping the forest. So if people like flavored tea, for example, or breakfast tea, then it's better for the farmers and for the forest and for the insects and for everyone in this area and in other areas also, because we can actually reforest certain plantations that have been damaged before if we have the volume and so on. So I think it's very important to listen to what people actually like to drink.
Yeah. I went to a conference. This was back in 2014, so it's been a while. But this is the North America Tea Conference, so it's kind of like the annual mafia meeting of all the big tea buyers. It was when I was first kind of starting out, so I just wanted to go network and get in. It was pretty much a waste of my time to be there because it just is a different, it's a different mentality. I mean, I got into a fight with a guy that told me that organic farming is impossible. Like, he just had it so locked in his head that organic is impossible to do in the current conditions, in the current market. But regardless, there was a presentation there by a third party, like nonprofit. It was like an economy analyst group. And they had looked at the Sri Lankan tea industry. So it was just one industry, but they looked at what would the sustainability price need to be, like average price increase of the commodity price of tea. So that's like that $2 a kilo price I had said, that's like typical commodity price. That would need to increase 7 times in order to maintain sustainability with the current system. Like, this is not even for like artisanal, reforestation. This is just for like the current like plantation system. So we're thinking about numbers of that, like taking the commodity price. Is that possible?
It's possible, and even some snobby brands, they even without sustainability can charge 7 times more from customers, and also if they want, pay 7 times more for the.
Will they want to? Will they want to? Will they?
Well, we do the same, and we do charge more because we have to pay more, and we have to. So it's normal, and a lot of people want to pay more for a flavored tea that is sustainable, that saves the forest and so on. They want to pay more for that.
Yeah, but if you see a brand that has shareholders, are they going to want to?
Not like and so on. Even if it's a breakfast tea to drink with milk and sugar, but they're willing to pay more money to have it sustainable. So I think that not everyone, but it's a big market who wants to do that.
Yeah.
But what is sustainable? I mean, like, if it's about a certificate, yeah, and it's about the price point we sell, then it's another story. And I guess everyone has a ruler in terms of what sustainable means and how is that applied. But just for the argument's sake, we're all arguing or expressing our opinions under the big game of tea as a product.
Yeah.
Whatever we do, we're doing our little part, to make the teas that the consumers want in terms of flavor, in terms of price point, in terms of our moral compass. That's what we do. But again, like Elyse was saying, that I'm with you in saying, there's no time for that because the overarching game is set out for you to behave in such a way. So whatever sustainability we're talking about here fundamentally is not going to really help because it's the overarching shadow is there. So I'm just saying this for theoretic point of view, and what we're saying here.
It takes a whole
For Elyse,
cultural shift, a whole consumer cultural shift of creating value, like appreciation and value. And I feel like anybody that's like thinking of their tea bag as just this casual thing that's flavored some fruity thing, and you know the brand is more important to them than the actual tea or the actual like you know energetic interaction with that tea, they'll never value it. And you know, so I just feel like our efforts are better served in trying to create a new culture of value and appreciation.
But we can add value by starting to be more thinking about how we produce our product. That's how we add value.
Absolutely.
But we don't have to change what people are looking for and what they like. We can still do what they want to buy, what they like, and accept and not say that certain tea culture are crap and other are not, because they're all tea cultures, and then we can produce those kind of tea cultures, but in a more sustainable and a better way.
I guess tea in general is creates a very inclusive vibe in terms of culture. You know, whether it's you grew up in London and your cup of comfort is a tea bag with milk and with sugar, and for me a cup of comfort is something different. But I guess
but that is
it's not about changing a culture. It's about delving deeper about the truth, about how economy is set up. And if we're just talking about a tea bag with milk and sugar in the mug as part of culture, then if we just think about that as the whole diversity of tea culture and the history and the stories, so when the world is seeing tea, why it's always about afternoon tea with this sort of setup with cake and with
Do you mean there is no history?
Let me finish and because I tend not to remember my point as I speak.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just saying that I think for me as a founder of a tea business, it's about diversify the culture of tea. It's not just about one way. It's not just about this mainstream way. It's showing the audiences, showing more people there's a diversity for all of us to celebrate and to sustain. And then there's a sustainable social and economical impact on when you see this sort of diversity. You know, so I guess that's what's important to diversity of tea, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important as well, and to accept the broad culture of tea. There's so many different cultures from all around the world. The tea is still the second most consumed beverage in the world, and we consume it in so many different ways all around the world. And we have to accept that this is a very broad culture, and not think like one culture is crap because they put mint in it or something like that. I think it's very important to accept it as cultures.
It's also very important for us to understand, you know, each culture. So, you know, for me as Chinese, particularly growing up in such a ancient, primitive way of living in the middle of nowhere in China, the way of tea is quite different in comparison to the tea here. So when we talk about tea, you know, I don't mean we as me as Chinese, but I mean everybody. When we talk about tea, we tend to talk about tea in the last 200 years. So one has to ask these questions. What happened to the 4,800 years since tea was discovered? And how come most of us don't know these stories or don't?
Well, for me, for me, who lives in Thailand, who has an even more ancient tea culture than that, the miang and the eating of tea is very important for me. Now, nobody eats the tea anymore, so we have to turn it to the drinking part of tea so that the farmers can actually, so they don't have to cut it down and put corn or pineapple or rubber or something in those areas and cut away the forest. But it's a very ancient, absolutely very ancient part. It's even more ancient to eat the tea. But that doesn't take away that the world is full of tea cultures.
It
And
does. It
I
absolutely does. I give way more reverence to that history than I do to this like modern colonized privilege that we are trying to celebrate here. I'm not going to celebrate that, you know. I don't know. I'm going to very much disagree with you,
What
Kenneth,
did
on
you
that.
say in the beginning? I didn't catch that.
There is more importance to, you know, like indigenous history that's been there much longer. I give much more reverence to that than to a modern privilege, a modern colonized privilege. Like, not, you know, like there is some value to it, but you know, like I work with Indian activists, like nonviolence activists, through the Ahimsa Center, and I did a presentation for them, and they wanted me to talk about the realities of democracy in the tea industry, which is like none. There's none. It's like absolute lack of dignity. And they were all shocked, you know, because they all had their chai culture. And like for them, like whenever I educated them that chai culture in India didn't start till the 1970s, that totally reminded them, because like these like our older Gandhi's grandson was in the audience and he was even shocked. He was like, yeah, I always thought that chai was like in our lineage for generations. It's like, no, this is a modern thing. Like, we don't have to be so attached to these cultures. If we prioritize and value sustainability and preservation and dignity for all people, then we should be willing to, you know, detach ourselves from the. It's very modern. I mean, 200 years versus 4,800 years, as Ray said, is like so true. You know, so. I don't know. I don't attach myself to these cultures. I'm ready to let go. I'm ready to let go of Walmart. Like if Walmart wants to burn to the ground, like I'm ready to let go of that, you know, and pave a new wave. Like I guess maybe that's just like kind of a younger mentality, but like we're in that time. Ray's right. Like there's no more time to waste. Like the ocean's acidified, the environment is changing. You know, like the forests are getting burned down. Like it's just happening, and we need to do what we can to stop it.
Yeah, that's why we have to start to produce tea that people like in a way that we can save the forest and put back forest to the tea plantations and so on. Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm sorry, I've become so hostile in that, but I just I
I'm completely. I think even just to say sustainability is really what we're talking about here. You know. TikTok. So I think it's finding ways to really dissolve that such a concept and to go back to how it was, and perhaps there's a message there.
So eating the tea, you mean?
That could be good.
No, I'm not saying that.
So we don't start to plant the tea in different kinds of plantation at all, and just continue go back to the old, very ancient, the first ways. Actually,
no, I'm saying about going back and face the narratives as tea as it is 5,000 years ago. You know, to have a curiosity to understand the history, what it actually is, but not just based on the last 200 years, based on colonialism, how tea has been for the last 200 years. I think one has the capacity and curiosity to know more and to understand that. And if you delve deeper into that, then you understand, you know, chai was there for a reason, and the tea bag with milk and sugar, there is a reason. And then you come up with your own compass of what sustainability means to you and what kind of questions you ask yourself when you choose a cup of tea. Everything is to do with yourself, you know, how you find information and to be well informed and make your decision upon that. everyone has a responsibility from the ancient world to modern world. Everyone has a responsibility in that. It's not about, yes, we as businesses, we have, we aspire to be, and we do what we think is right, but everyone should also do what they think is right. And by doing things right, I mean by delving deep to find out the truth, not because what Google and Wikipedia is telling you, and also not about the five-star hotels is telling you, or the health magazine is telling you, but going back to the source, why people started eating tea 5,000, 6,000 years ago in Thailand, and why people doing tea this way.
Where tea was growing in this, where the tea was
where tea was originally.
It's a natural thing to you first start to eat.
Yeah, how tea was started before the Opium War, before everything. Just how much.
That is exactly that's exactly what we are working a lot with, but it doesn't take away the fact that the best way of keeping the tea in a sustainable way is to have a sustainable economy as well and have a market for it. So actually create teas that people want to drink, but in a natural, in a good way, with the history, without the history, it doesn't matter, but with good for the nature and good for our planet.
Whether it's going back to the history or making teas that people like, I think we are all going towards the same direction, isn't it?
Yeah, they're just different roads. They're different roads. So it's like trying to create a new specialty audience, which Kenneth is right. It is a very limited audience, but like trying to build that one up, or trying to fit the sustainable tea into the commodity like market channel where the market's big, but are they really going to appreciate and pay the higher price? Which, Kenneth, you have seen that success. It's working for you. Now, is that success 1,000 tons a year? Because that's where we need to be. Are you doing 1,000 tons a year? Like that's the numbers that we would need to be at to really be having success on that path.
Not yet, but it would be possible if we're following this way. It would be possible, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, they're just different paths to go down, and I'm quite pessimistic about this path because I've had direct bad experience in this path of working with clients that are trying to fit sustainable products into Walmart. And it always backfires on them, and then the margins are so small and like they're so competitive, and then packaging is more important, and that's shitty. Like I pay more for my packaging than I pay for the tea itself. It's like, what? No, that's wrong. Like we got to fix that, It just feels wrong. I don't know. For me, it does at least. And so there's always conflict on this path, and this path is slow and steady, like this one, we just got to slowly introduce cup of tea by cup of tea to people, but I'm finding far more success here than I am on this path. You know what I mean? So I guess that's why I'm so passionate about this. Because I
that
go
is a
both.
very big problem with packaging, that is so expensive if you want to be more or less think about the nature and so on. It's really a problem. That's if you want to be sustainable, you have to pay almost more for the packaging.
Yeah, really, you do.
It's sad that the packaging industry, but I think there's a lot of things going on there. But the packaging industry is not really. It's difficult to be sustainable in packaging.
I would like to share a question from the audience. Stephanie asked, commodity tea was my gateway to tea, then to other tea cultures. I appreciate sustainable tea and trying to get back to the origins, forest tea, wild tea. But what about those in poverty who can't afford the specialty sustainable tea? Like people in poverty may not have the energy to delve into these questions. These are questions of privilege.
Drink less tea.
But I think that if we can do for the people who can afford, if we can increase the production of tea into more sustainable productions, then probably will be one group of people who can afford that. But then we anyway make a bigger part of the production becomes sustainable than it is now, because today is very bad. It's very bad. Have to do something. And poor people is never gonna, not in China, not anywhere, are gonna buy expensive tea, and often tea that grows in a sustainable way becomes expensive.
Look, I just wanted to share, as a person who grew up in the least privileged areas in the whole of China, below, just we are the second poorest province, just above Tibet. I grew up without running water, without heating, and to travel 20 kilometers, it's 8 hours job. And in the mountains, there's no road, there's nothing. So how do these people drink tea? How do these people? First of all, Stephanie, I wanted to say the word specialty tea, sustainability, sustainable tea, all of these things are created here. For those people who live with it, it doesn't really. There's no such concept. So how you do? So when you drink a tea, because it's less of a conceptualized way of living, I guess. So when these people drink tea, it's just a matter of whatever is around. You make tea depending on what you're given by nature. You make it. And that has been conceptualized as being sustainable. But that's just how poor people live. And when they can't have tea, they dry it, they hang it on the roof, and they just every so often they get some out and drink it. And I think that there's a gap from how we live in the West or more developed world to see how people lived back in the days, or back in the in the primitive form. I think there's a very different way of living, so it's very difficult to make an equation of this is how sustainable tea is enjoyed here, and so how does people live back home, and this is how they enjoy sustainable tea. The concept doesn't equate, it doesn't even get translated. So
if you want to drink that same tea in London, it becomes expensive with the transport and everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, but still not more than 15 cents a serving. Not more than that, really. If you really break it down, and if you're that poor, because I think Stephanie's asking for poverty, in our developed society's idea of poverty, maybe different than what you were describing, Ray. But if you have money to afford a Coca-Cola, you have money to afford a nice cup of tea. You really do, and especially if you really understand the tea, you can brew it over and over again, and you buy less of it. Buy an ounce a month and just cherish that. And I always say that connoisseurship has nothing to do with wealth. There is this conception that to be a wine connoisseur, to be a Scotch connoisseur, to be a connoisseur of fine products, you have to be wealthy to collect all of them, and that's your identity. It's no, connoisseurship is just an interest. It's an acute interest in something and the nuances of it, right? So you can be poor and be a connoisseur and also be an environmentalist and, sustainably minded. You just consume less and value more. That's the whole cultural shift that I am trying to inspire in the world, that thinking of tea as a commodity, I need to have a big box of tea bags, so every morning I have at least one tea bag for myself. Then in that case, if you think about that, then maybe it's expensive. Oh yeah, this is going to be a $300 a month habit. It doesn't have to be. It could be this very cherished ritual that we appreciate and enjoy, and know in our hearts that even if we're struggling, the products that we're consuming are still supporting people. Now, if we listen to what Walmart tells us, oh, you're poor, so you need to buy these products, you need to eat at McDonald's and buy this plastic thing and this thing, that's we don't have to accept that's actually what's causing so much harm in the world.
So that if you're not super interested in tea, you should not be able to enjoy your cup of tea.
No, you enjoy it and you cherish it. You cherish it. You know, it's not just a tea bag that you're just gonna flop out like, oh yeah, I'll get another one tomorrow. It's like, no, like this is it. Like I'm really, really cherishing this, you know, and I can say that because I don't make a lot of money. And I haven't for a long time, you know, and I live like royalty in my perspective because I cherish every breath of air.
Cleaning up hotels and stuff like that, and coming home completely dead. You maybe have a different lifestyle.
Yeah, I was an Uber driver for a long time to support this business. I did that, driving people in my car 60 hours a week on top of working in the office. I did that for 2.5 years. So I know what it is to hustle. And I still didn't complain. And I found those little moments to cherish. And like, honestly, I feel like I live like a king. I eat very well. I drink, you know, good tea. I don't drink a lot of it, but like when I cherish it, you know, and I make less than $1,000 a month, you know, and that's like paying my whole expenses and everything, you know, so.
But this is what I mean, Elyse, earlier when I was saying about, you know, going back to look at how we lived our lives before, even long before the modern world, you know, when everything wasn't so available. How comes, you know, how there's such a wisdom from how we used to live to how we live, and such damage to how we live and how we think and behave and consume. So, you know, if a tea can be brewed 20 or 30 times, then you brew a tea 20 and 30 times, you know, and you know, each week you have maybe you consume 20 grams of tea. Mm-hmm. So I think that was my point when earlier when I was saying, you know, sustainability nowadays is such a far-fetched ideal that everyone's so into it, but then really is really to connect with how we live in terms of consumption, you know, how much we consume or demand in comparison to actually how much we need. And because
you've been to, for example, Morocco,
to buy more and to consume more, to try more, but as a being, essentially, is really not the case.
Kenneth, the audio overlapped, so I couldn't hear you clearly. Could you repeat what you said?
Who?
Could you repeat what you Kenneth, you. Could you repeat what you said while Ray was talking?
For example, if we have places like Morocco, for example, they really love their tea and they really appreciate their tea and so on. They don't have a tea that they can brew 20 times because they mix it with a lot of mint and other herbs and so on, and they cannot brew it 20 times. And this is a very important tea culture. Even though it's not 5,000 years old, it's an important tea culture. All the tea culture doesn't have to be 5,000 years old because time have changed and there's a lot of tea culture. A lot of people really enjoy their tea in many different ways. And they are really appreciating the tea and they are really kind of taking care of it and really appreciate it. I think it's very elitistic and very kind of quite, I don't like the idea of just like saying that all these cultures the last 200 years is just crap and bullshit and not sustainable. It can absolutely be that. It's just the way that we have to turn it into maybe the production has to be a little bit better and and turn it to be sustainable.
I clarify for myself, I'm not saying that at all. Just to clarify, I'm saying it's important for us to delve into the history of tea as a culture and the diversified culture of tea and diversify how we know tea. This is all I'm saying. I'm not saying that Morocco, who drink mint tea with green tea, is not a culture that we should cherish. This is not what I'm saying. Good. What I'm saying is because of how everything is set up, has been set up in the last 200 years, it closed a lot of doors for us. Not only that, but also it numbed us for not wanting to know more. And that wanting to know more is a direct link to how we consume, how we choose to consume. Otherwise, we're forever trapped into consumerism, wanting more, needing more. And this is the importance of knowing our history and knowing our culture as humanity, not just as this is Chinese, this is Thai, this is South American. It's not about that, but about us as human, our collective wisdom. Where did it come from? How could that teach us? This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so here's my turn to clarify that I also am not demonizing those cultures. They are to be cherished. All culture is to be cherished. And I also agree with you, Kenneth, that like we need to change production systems to make it more sustainable and fit more. But what I'm working on is the assumption that if we do that, those cultures will change. They're going to evolve. And so like what I'm saying is that we have to like let go to our attachments to those cultures and like
why does it have to change? What do you mean?
If we change the production systems and the sustainability price, the commodity sustainability price needs to be 7 times higher. I'm just using that example from those economists. That's just a random number. If it has to go up, like everything is going to change in some way, even if it's a little bit of a change or whatever type of change. And if we're going to make space for that change to happen, we need to let go of our attachments that like the tea culture has to be this way and we have to plug the sustainable tea into how this culture currently is. It's like, no, maybe we need to open our minds and open ourselves up to understanding where this culture will evolve to support the sustainability.
Still, I don't think it needs to be 100%. I think if we turn big part of the production in a more sustainable way, but still it doesn't, all the tea doesn't have to raise seven times to make a much better world. It's not necessary. Even in China, they've been producing a non-sustainable, they're cutting forests for a long time to make these tea plantations that have been doing for so many years. It's not sustainable. Tea production in China hasn't been sustainable for, I don't know how long time. Where did this last 200 years, where did the Brits take that culture from? They took it from China to make this monocrop tea plantation. This is a cultural thing in China too for a long time. So it's not that bad. So it's not like it's a new thing and it's a Western thing. It's not. It's been going on for a long, long time in the history. The tea plantations were starting to be put up, in Ding Dynasty or something like that. It's been going on for a long time, and the monocrop agriculture has been going on for a very long time. But so it's not that as a problem; it's the mass of the monocrop agriculture that is the problem. So if we can turn a lot of it to be a more sustainable way, and maybe keep some like it
capitalism is the problem. That's it. Capitalism is the problem. If we're talking about China,
when it comes to nature, anyway, I thought it was the monocrop plantation that is the problem.
If you look at how Chinese cultures, not just tea, everything has been damaged or long lost because of that. Because China has been going into a capitalist world, and that is threatening the ancient tea trees, that is threatening the wild tea trees, that is threatening the biodiversity of ancient forests. I've seen in my own eyes just hundreds of thousands of ancient tea trees being cut down because of this.
I've seen it in Yunnan. It's a mass destruction of that. Absolutely, I've seen it the last 15 years, 20 years.
I think, and that's a pretty modern phenomenon too. I don't think it's like an old thing.
Even before there was a mass destruction of forests, for example, because of tea plantations, long time ago.
Like in the 1950s.
That was very recent.
This is recent.
200 years. It's in the 200 years. What happened?
It's not that old. They're ancient there's ancient paintings of tea plantation. That means cut down forest and put monocrop tea plantation. They're very
Yes,
old.
look at the population then to population now. You know,
Yeah, but
even
the
okay.
non-sustainable production has been going on for a very long time. The monocrop production been going on for a long, long time.
Not at the
How-
scale that is happening now.
In China, yeah, or in China, because they didn't want to start with the monocrop tea production. China. So it's an ancient thing.
How ancient we're talking about here? You know, just to clarify here,
Well,
what are the years
maybe
and the evidence you're talking about here, just so that we can clarify for the audience? How ancient is that?
Thousand Ming Dynasty. That when they start to produce, when did you write this book?
Okay, so that's, if you were talking about Ming Dynasty or Qing Dynasty, that is still, it's not that long ago. It really isn't.
200 years.
Sorry?
It's long. It was going on long before. Even since you can also say that the monocrop cultivation started also long before that in other productions, not only tea, in other things as well.
Yeah, but what were the reasons when they did that? You know, I mean, it's very easy for us to jump into a one thing to argue on the overarching big problem here, and I don't really want to go into that because there's a lot of lack of clarity in terms of what we're talking about. So if we're talking about the sustainability of how tea is structured today, I say this and I'll say it time and time again, you know, it's because of the singularity of how we perceive tea that, you know, is causing, if we see it as unsustainable, that in my own opinion, this is why it's causing the problem.
Yeah, but anyway, doesn't matter. I just think that the monocrop way of growing things has been going on for many, many thousands of years, and it's been getting worse the last with the industrialization and so on, and but it's been going on for a long time. And I think that in the future one can keep some of the crop plantations, but increase the non-monocrop plantations in not only in tea, in many other areas.
I wish I was more knowledgeable and was educated to moderate this session properly.
Oh, we did a good job
Time
ourselves,
is
Sue. Don't worry.
I was like, okay. Time is up, and another session is coming. But I would like to ask one question from the audience. Ingrid asked to each presenter, what is your biggest dream or ideal future for tea, if you could change the word?
For me, it would be to just turn as much as possible of the tea production to start to reforest the tea plantation, have less production and more forest in the normal tea plantations, like cut the quantity and put more quality and more biodiversity around the leaves, so we can get more forest that we need on this planet, and also to protect the forest that is still existing, and to use the tea to do that. Actually plant tea together with forest to protect the tea, because today things that it is like that. Things that doesn't have an economical value has a tendency to disappear. So we want to put an economical value to the forest by producing tea or other things together with the forest.
My dream is that, you know, everybody along the value chain from tea production, tea growing, tea production to the tea connoisseurship will become better connected. And in that connection, all of these issues of environmental, economic sustainability will work themselves out whenever all these stakeholders, because ultimately we're all stakeholders together. We are all, ambassadors and stewards of this together. I think the farmers and the producers, they want to. They want to treat their land well. They want to be biodiverse. A lot of times they choose to do monoculture only because of the pressure from the market, from the buyers. They sell tea to the local market. Like, the only way that they can put food on the table for their family is with quantities. And so that's how they cut all the other trees out and just put tea there. It's like, okay, this is how we optimize our yields. The farmers already want to do the work. The consumers obviously want to do the work with, all of the passion and the energy coming in the comment section here. And I think maybe the consumers just need more tools, So I'm going to put a link here of the list of questions that TLET uses for any farmer that wants to start marketing their products on our platform. I've made these questions public for the whole community, that even consumers can have access to these 30 questions and ask your tea shop owner, ask your tea vendor. They may not have the answers of every single one of those questions, but the more you ask them, the more it's going to challenge the business people and all of those other people in that value chain to start, connecting with those questions and valuing that information. And my dream is that it'll all just kind of work itself out if we can all do that.
Thank you, Elyse.
I have a dream. My dream is for everyone to drink less tea, really, and to just do less, be less, drink less. And my dream is for everyone to be able to connect with themselves, what you actually need, or what in comparison to what your mind tells you that you need. And if we orientate ourselves that way, then as a whole, I think how we consume will change. And also my dream is also for the gap from the person who buys tea to the person who picked the tea leaves, the gap to be smaller. So in my ultimate dream is this person who drinks tea is friend with this person who picks the tea. They know each other like family. And that is my ultimate dream. So that, I guess, means asking questions. Who grows this tea? Where does it come from? And if you don't know this, always be suspicious and don't put that in your belly, because, it's not, if you don't know it, don't drink it, don't consume it. And that's within your absolute right. That is something that you can do from today and every day. So, yeah, lots of dream here. I'm too dreamy.
I'm so happy because I'm living your dream. Every cup of tea I know are my friends who picked. I'm living it.
Lovely.
Yeah, let's share that privilege with the world. Everybody needs to have that privilege. It'd be great.
I really love that connection. That is so beautiful for me to work in Asia compared to when I worked in Europe with tea, that I'm here now with people who actually pick the tea and to produce the tea and so on. Wonderful people. And same as you say, it's beautiful. If you're that extra that you get from the tea when you know the person who actually produced it, who picked it, and it gives something extra in also in the taste, actually.
Yes, what a wonderful word that would be. That is, to me, that is really what tea is.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Nice ending. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Here, the tea pickers behind.
Bow.
Can I just say one last thing? And I guess I can say this on behalf of everyone. Sue, thank you so much for organizing this for all of us. And the level of professionalism, the design, everything that you've done you know, and even just to provide a space for us to argue over tea is just brilliant.
Incredible.
Thank you.
So do you know that she's been doing this alone? You know that she's doing all this all alone. She doesn't even have help. She doesn't have
Yes.
a leader. She's doing everything alone. I think just like, wow, bravo.
Thank you. Next year, hopefully with a team.
Yeah, we're all gonna come and help, whatever you need.
Thank you. We have Discover Tea in South America coming up, so we will need to adjourn. But if you are available, there is a room to continue on this conversation. So it's up to you. Have the space in the session room,
Okay.
and I will stop broadcasting. See you in a
Okay.
bit.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.
All right. Let's go. That was interesting. Anybody here? Nobody's here.